Rachel Perry, welcome to Guitar Intelligence.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. Good. I'm excited to rock.
All right. So this podcast is about or features guitar players, people who make a living playing guitar. So, and you were a student of mine when you were what, 14 or something?
Yeah, maybe even like 13. It's been a long time.
And you were playing the Donnas.
Uh-huh.
And,
Allison Robertson on guitar.
you met her, didn't you? Didn't you meet the
Yeah.
Donnas? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Do you still remember a Donna's riff?
I don't know if I...
Put you on the spot. Do you remember a Donna's riff? Anyway, so
if I took a minute to think about it, I think I could.
so from that, since then you've done so much musically, and created a lifestyle and a living out of playing guitar, and now many other instruments. How many instruments do you play?
I'm losing track because every time someone
Like
brings
all
up a
those in the
new
background, I
instrument,
see a lot.
At least 20. If it has strings, I'll play it. I just started playing the Irish tin whistle.
Interesting.
It's really confusing because it's the opposite kind of method that you would play on a string instrument. When you press down your finger on the string, the note goes up, right?
Yeah.
So on this, when you press down another finger, the note goes down.
Goes flat,
so
huh?
It's so confusing for my brain.
Well, it's interesting that you just said that. So, do you think that obviously the all of the other instruments are kind of an extension of the guitar? It's almost like guitar is your primary instrument, and then you kind of relate everything to that, at least initially, when you start to play another instrument, don't you?
Definitely.
Now, did you play piano right away back in the day? I don't remember you playing piano, or did you pick up on that afterwards?
I did. I was kind of like off and on. I took some lessons for a while, learning like classical music that I didn't really like, and like musical theater, like popular, like super ridiculous musical theater stuff. So I didn't really take to it. But then I started teaching myself like Muse. I really love Muse because they kind of incorporate like classical elements with like heavy rock and flamenco style. So I started teaching myself that stuff on piano, and like I learned Moonlight Sonata and the songs that I liked, and then I started playing it more regularly, and now I play it like every day. I started teaching myself those things when I was like around the same time I started taking lessons from you, and I was applying the music theory that you were teaching me on the piano, and that's how I kind of like made that connection of like, oh, if I know one instrument, it's kind of like gateway instrument.
Yeah.
Now it opens all of these other doors. So if it has notes on it, I can figure out. Okay,
Yeah,
go to the
exactly.
major third. You can just figure it out. Fake it till you make it.
And piano's a good instrument visually. I mean, most people learn theory on piano, and I have guitar students, people with like master's degrees in music, but since they learn theory on piano, there's my emojis coming in. Since they learn music theory on piano, when they come to play it on guitar, then there's so much that piano doesn't cover when it comes to guitar, because guitar is so different in the sense that you can find the same note in many different places.
That makes it so confusing.
Yes.
So when I'm teaching, I usually teach in here like in person. I'll open the piano behind me, and then I'll just be like, okay, so if they're not getting it on the strings of the guitar, it's like on piano, it's literally black and white.
Yeah.
The black notes are the accidentals, typically. Sometimes you can have B sharp though, or like E sharp.
Yeah.
And then it's a white key, and then it starts getting confusing again. But yeah, it's a lot more linear on the piano because you can't play the same note twice.
Yes. And the reason that I called on you is because, I've taught probably 5,000 students in the last 38 years, and such a small amount of students go on to make a living out of music. Most people, I think most people just want to play guitar because it's fun and it's cool. And then a lot of people want to play in bands, or have but very few want to write songs, surprisingly. I mean,
Yeah.
and even fewer go on to like, and I also would say that seems like people that are like in cover bands and stuff kind of blow off lessons. Like if they're good enough to play through the songs, then they don't figure that they need to learn anything else.
Yeah.
So they don't really grow outside of just the new challenges that new songs present. You know what I mean? So technically, skill-wise, technique-wise, they have to develop if they want to play. If the latest hit has something in it that requires
Yeah.
some sort of
I
some
totally
sort
know
of
what you mean.
skill.
I've played in a lot of cover bands that are like that, where I'll be like, hey, let's change the key, let's go up a whole step. Like, 1 fret? No, a whole step. 2 frets.
Yeah. Or when if a singer gets up with the band and acoustic and then clamps a capo on, and then all of a sudden some song you've been practicing
Yep.
for months or years is a whole new song now. It's like, what key is
Yep.
that?
Can't use the open strings now. Unless you also grab the capo. That's cheating, though.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I
Yeah.
use the
So,
capo occasionally.
well, and, I was talking on my last episode with Jay Udaley, and he was talking about how some musicians have like a classical kind of personality or mindset where they're more into,
Technique.
just memorizing things and playing them. And then other people are more improvisational. And improvisational people, and I'll give you good examples. I have a student who is taking shred lessons from me because he wants to play like Yngwie Malmsteen, but he's also studying classical music in college with Kevin Jellison. Remember Kevin at the
Yeah.
Lifetime Performing Arts?
Wow.
He's like a professor teaching classical music now.
Wow, that's awesome. Good for
But
him.
anyway, so when he sent me a link to his one of his solo performances, and I studied classical for a year just to have some of that wisdom, just to understand classical a little bit, and I've played a lot of classical stuff. But sitting there watching him perform by himself on a chair and play something complex that he had to commit to memory and play to the best of his ability. That's like my nightmare scenario, you know what I mean? Because I'm not that, I could do it, but I would feel a tremendous amount of pressure because, but on the other hand, he would feel a tremendous amount of pressure to just get up on stage and just improvise. Because I could get up there and just jam, no problem.
Yeah.
And I'd feel perfectly comfortable doing it. But so it's interesting that some people have, lean sometimes hard one way or hard the other way, but then there's also that kind of middle ground
Definitely.
where I would say that both of us reside, where
I try to stay in the middle. I like the way that you put it once. You said there's like 3 feels of music. There's like the classical approach, there's the blues approach, and then there's
jazz.
like
Mind, body,
jazz.
spirit.
Yeah,
Jazz is
exactly.
mind. That's improvisational.
Yeah.
Classical is body because it's physical, and then
blues
the
is just-
spirit is just kind of. But
Those are the ones who play with feel.
yeah, the feel.
I try to
players.
be somewhere in the middle of all of those things.
Yeah, and the other thing is that, which something else that I got from Jay, he was my mentor when I was 19 years old, so I carry a lot of that stuff along with me. But saying that composers, people who write their own songs, that's an improvisational thing because you have to come up with stuff unless you steal something directly from someone else. But you still have to
That's
be
always a method.
but you still have to be creative in that. Even be creative enough to do that, I'll sometimes
have to-
borrow chord progressions, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not.
But you have to create it a little bit differently. You have to make it different enough to where no one will associate those two things, and you want it to be your own. Sometimes what I like to do is take a melody or like a chord progression that I really, really like, and I'll put it in reverse and try to like turn that into a song instead of just like changing the key.
Well, the jazzers back in the day they would just take, a song that was on Broadway or whatever, a show tune, and just sometimes they would, change the key or reharmonize it or add, extensions and substitutions, some of the chords. But they would just basically just steal these songs outright and then make up new melodies. And then they became standards, same progression, new melodies, which is not that, if you think about it, that's not that far removed from the blues. It's just a 1-4-5. Every song is the same song.
There's a limited amount of chords out there and progressions.
Yeah.
I think that's why the copywriting rule is it's for the lyrics and the melody. Those are the only parts of the song that you can truly copyright. So you can steal chord progressions from, Canon and D is the most common chord progression.
I was just playing Night and Day, the Billie Holiday version, and I was like, I love the... And I was like, I love those chords so much, like... It's like, I want to steal that now and stick it in something, It's like a E major 7, and then an E flat dominant 7, and then and then an E flat dominant 7, and then an A flat major 7.
That's an interesting chord progression.
Yeah, it's really. The cool thing is because it has a common tone throughout, so it's like that's the note she's singing. So it's like. But anyway, so you've been releasing some new music that you recorded over the last year or something?
Yeah.
And so what's your well, I got a few questions about this because I want to talk about your method as far as how you if you have a common way that you write songs or if it's a lot of different ways, and also what's your goal as a recording artist, because I'm a recording artist as well, but it's not like it was in the old days. It's like, as far as making a living, you've got to be teaching or doing studio stuff or performing. You have to wear a lot
of hats, a lot of different hats.
Because the recording artists that I know that make a living doing it, still, they're not making any money off of the sales. I got a email yesterday that my check is coming from CD Baby for $20.21 or something.
You made it. Woo! Big time, baby.
But a lot of people that I know that are touring, when the tour's over, they got to find work because they're employed while they're on the road. But the day they get off the plane, they got to start gigging and teaching because that gravy train has come to a halt, right? Until the next one comes around. And that's the thing is like, it's the opposite. Once they get back and they're teaching and performing, they can't really be stabilized because as soon as they get the call to go on the road again, they basically got to drop everything they're doing and go back. So their whole existence is like on shaky ground. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty depressing. As a musician, I feel like the whole music industry is just kind of screwed up, and it's just sad.
I'll tell you something else interesting is I just listened to this audiobook called The Rise and the Fall of the Rock Star. And it kind of put it in perspective that if you think about the Beatles, when the Beatles came out on Ed Sullivan, then there was only like 2 or 3 channels on the television, right? And which channel do you think the kids are going to watch? They're going to watch the one with the Beatles on it or Walter Cronkite? You know what I mean?
Obviously.
So there's like, and in the UK, there was only one channel, the BBC. So there's only a single channel. So when they show up on Top of the Pops, that's all that everyone in the whole country sees on television. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So it's like a funnel to where you're seeing just a limited amount of artists, and those artists have maximum exposure, And that's the way also the radio would play like 30, sometimes they'd have as few as 30 songs that they would play in rotation, and you'd have like 1 or 2 radio stations that are just hitting you over the head.
And they're doing it because of the record companies.
And that's all payola or whatever. You have these corporations who are paying people off to make sure that their artists are seen. So the Beatles, let's say a new Beatles arrives in 2024.
Yeah.
Well, if they're on the Ed Sullivan show, what is that? They got 600 channels on TV plus YouTube and the internet or whatever. And even if 1 million people see it,
That's still not that many.
no, that's not that many, and not everybody's going to know who you're talking about. So it's like
Yeah.
really,
Also,
and yeah,
if
go
it's
ahead.
not auto-tuned, or if it's not produced exactly how the American, the average American listener listens to, all this
Perceives
radio
music,
pop music.
yeah.
Yeah. They're like, oh, this is weird. This is different. There's too many guitars in this song. It sounds too raw. That kind of production is pretty dead these days, I think.
Well, on the other hand, they are the CEOs at like Spotify and Apple Music and whatever. They're now in the business of owning music. So it's not they're not developing artists. They don't even want new art. They don't need a new
Yeah.
artist. What they're doing is buying back catalogs
Totally.
of great music. So they have music that's already proven to be the best, and then that way they can use it to slip it into playlists. And think about perfect example is the Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, with the
Oh
guy
my
with the
God.
cranberry juice or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Did that song make a comeback or what? It was back on the charts, you know what I mean? It was like
Yeah.
everyone was covering it, and it's like, and that could have even been planned. It wouldn't surprise me if some business exec said, "We'll get some guy on drinking cranberry juice," and then
Yeah.
and then they have these, these factories or whatever where they can have all kinds of bots like and share, and
Yeah.
so it's a whole different thing. But that was one question, because obviously that's the sucky part. But at the same time, you have the opportunity to present your music worldwide now, and you didn't have that before. At
Yeah,
least
exactly.
at least you know that even my $20 for however many streams that is, that's when I look at the statistics, I see that people all around the world are listening to my music.
Yeah.
People in Germany and Japan or whatever, and that could have never happened before if I didn't have a deal on a big company.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing. There's pros and cons to everything, so it's not all bad.
So
But yeah,
so what's your process? Let's get to that. Like what was your latest
from the
song
very
was
beginning.
what was the new one was
Triggers.
Triggers, and I thought that's my favorite. What, you released 3 so far, right?
Yeah.
And how many songs you got?
Thanks.
Like 10?
10. There's an intro, but that doesn't count as a song.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
there's
then
10 songs on the album.
and releasing them as singles. That's the way.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, and then I think I'm gonna release the whole album in November, right before my birthday,
Okay.
as
I
a
did
little gift for myself.
yeah, last year I did 31 songs in 28 weeks.
Wow, that's
And
awesome.
just instrumental stuff. But I was just, and I do it for, that's like, is it a spirit? That's another whole topic, but is it a spiritual need to release
Yeah.
music, or or some people it's an egotistical thing to
Yeah. It can be a
gather
combo.
likes, and yeah, and it could be, there's also a blend in the middle of that too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
It's
with my
funny.
numbers of streaming, then it's it would not be satisfying to any ego. So
It's humbling.
yeah, it's humbling. So I'll take the spiritual side. So, but anyway, tell me about, like, let's just take that song for instance. How did you how
Well,
did it
that
come
song,
about?
Triggers, that one is probably one of my favorite songs on the whole album. And that's one that sparked the initial wanting to record an album. I recorded that on my phone using GarageBand
Okay.
and a little external mic that you can plug in
Yeah.
on Amazon. It was like a little tripod. It was a Japanese karaoke mic. In Japan, karaoke is really big.
Yeah.
And they'll actually buy their own to bring to the karaoke clubs. So it was one of these little Japanese karaoke mics that it has like a little fader to add delay and to add reverb.
Oh, interesting.
It was only like $30, so it's like a piece of crap, right? So I used that to record the vocals, and I made this demo for Triggers, and the musical process of it was honestly just, I usually start with just playing chords. I think it was on guitar that I started playing
Is
music.
it now? Do you have a melody in mind?
I
or
did
does the-
not have a melody
Okay.
in mind. Usually the melody comes last. That's the hardest part for me because I want the melody to be very, like, planned out. I don't want it to just be willy-nilly.
The strongest
want
part
it-
of the song.
Yeah, I want it to be very strong and, like, I want it to develop so it's a little more subdued in the verse, and then I want it to be big in the chorus. That's just how I like songs to be.
Yeah.
But the chords to me, they don't really matter, but I want to like them, if that makes sense. Like, I want to be able to be like, okay, this song is fun because I'm not just playing like a 1, 5, 6, 4, you know.
Yeah.
Screw that. I hate that so much as a music teacher. I'm always craving like interesting chord progressions because, you know, we've heard it all. We've heard pretty much like every chord progression. So I like to usually start on like the 4.
Yeah. The Lydian chord.
Yeah, exactly.
Or I guess if you're playing in a minor key, it would be the Dorian.
Yeah, and then I like to do interesting like voice leading where like the bass will go up to the 3rd or the 5th instead of the root note.
So
And
you're
then
thinking theory right there.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
okay.
So I
So you're
use
using the mind, the intellect.
yeah. And yeah, I'll usually just sit down and just see where my hands go. So I got an F, D minor, then A minor 7, and a G chord.
Yeah.
So it's the key of C, but you know, it's
That's a nice
starting on
progression
the
though.
4.
Already
Thanks.
sounds good. It doesn't sound typical because
Right?
you're not starting on the 1.
Yeah. And then it also has this kind of wanting to continue because you don't hear the tonic. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So it's like, okay, where is this going? But then it also is able to just be looped forever.
Yeah.
But then I don't like having a song that has the same 4 chords because there's just, I want it to be, maybe it's my ego. I want it to be
Yeah.
more intelligent than that.
Yeah.
But I always love writing a bridge. The bridge is one of my favorite parts because the bridge of that song is completely different with the production. We cut all of the instruments out and it's just like an electric guitar just some of the chords are similar and then it goes into, let's see, it goes to like some weird
Diminished.
and then it goes to the E7, so what would that be like? The major 3, the dominant 3rd, and then it goes back to the 4.
Yeah.
So I like interesting chord progressions, and then after I have the bare bones, you know, of the chords, then I like to slap with a bass.
Yeah.
So
The
I know
bass is
that's-
really good in that song too.
Thanks. Yeah, that's my favorite part.
I love playing. You know,
This
when I
bass
write,
line.
I always do the. Well, it's definitely the chords. When you said the chords are just supporting the melody, for me, it's the
Yeah.
chords are the primary part of the song because writing instrumentals. And an interesting way that I did it last year with all those singles is I would come up with a title and I would have Midjourney generate an image, and when I would look at the image, and
That's
then
cool.
because I wanted to write it from a soundtrack perspective, you know what I mean? So I wanted to
Yeah.
create music that would represent the image that I was looking at.
That's cool.
And then I had to, you know, and then I basically dove into I learned a lot about music score,
Yeah.
you know, film score composition and the rules that they use, which would be a whole nother thing.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to get more into that because I love like composing.
Well, we can definitely get together and go over that, but that would be a long, we'll be going on for hours if I get started on that.
Yeah.
But to find fascinating new cinematic sounding progressions. And then what I do, since I'm not a great piano player, I'm not even a good piano player really, but I would go in, like I go in GarageBand and I just write the piano part out in notation. So I'd write it out in notation and then I would have, you know, GarageBand play the piano part and I put the drums down, and then I always do the bass
Yeah.
first, and I always have a lot of fun playing the bass.
Me too.
But
I
then
love it.
for me, it's the melody is really like an afterthought in the sense that it's I improvise on all the songs. I improvised, and I learned something from there's this great producer engineer Richard Berdice that I always see when I want to pay a bunch of money and go do a song right. But he always told me, he said, you know, I know you prepare your solos in advance because it costs a lot of money to do, you know, to go in the studio, you know, studio time, the clock is ticking, and
Yeah.
you want to have some sort of idea. and you don't want to meander for hours and not come up with something, or go home and not be happy with it. And he's like, but I can tell you, for as long as I've known you and been working with you, your very first take is
always
always
the
the
best.
very best one. So,
Yeah.
so that's what I
It's the
did
most real. It's the
all
most real.
year. For all of those songs, I would just once, because I had heard the song enough, because I'd done the piano part, I'd done the bass part, the bass, drums, and piano were there, and I would just listen, and I would look at the picture for a reference, and then I would just improvise. And as long as I didn't make any glaring mistakes,
Yeah.
or I would just get to a point to where it stopped, and then I would just stop, and then I'd take it up from there. So that was the beauty of it, is that it was all, because again, improvisation, that's where I feel like I'm being the most
Yeah.
connected to the subconscious.
I try to do that with songs, but it's hard to do that with recording. I feel like there's always one element in the song, whether it's just like an overdub of just like a slide guitar part of just me being like, hey, let's dial this in. Let's try to do something weird right here. And then
Yeah.
that's pretty much how or maybe
The
like a
studios,
guitar
that's the
solo.
other thing, is that you were doing, so we kind of switched roles, because I was doing everything in the studio with other musicians. And then I got GarageBand, and I was excited and wanted
Yeah.
to try it. So I did 31 songs in 28 weeks. But then you, this time, went into the studio and worked with other musicians, right?
Actually, I recorded all of the instruments myself.
Oh, okay. But
Except for
but this time you were in a studio environment, so you
Yeah.
at least had collaborators
Yeah,
hanging around.
I was working with a really amazing producer, John O'Brien in Idlewild. He's really, really cool. He's very sensitive and like intuitive. And it's kind of funny because I come from a background of like really intense like music theory, and I want to understand it, and I want it to like piece together and
Yeah.
make sense. And I want it to be, complicated. But he's kind of the opposite. He does like a lot of like singer-songwriter, like folk, mellow kind of. He just wants it to feel good and to sound comfortable and like pleasing. And he knows when something works and when it doesn't. But like when I would tell him like, he would ask me what the key is, because he wants to like, write it down so he knows. I'm like, well, this song modulates from D to F, and then it goes to B flat. And he's like, what? Why can't you just write a song that's in like one key? It's too complicated.
He wouldn't like my music at all then, because it changes keys sometimes on
Yeah.
the chords. The chords, the film score stuff. It's like you're in one
yeah, I
key
love
for
that.
one chord, and then you're in a whole different key for the next chord.
Exactly. It modulates like every quarter note almost.
Yeah, and that's the
But-
beauty of improvisation over that stuff for me, was like
Yeah.
because all the melodies sound unique. I can still
Yeah.
listen to all the stuff that I recorded because it's so unique. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's not diatonic or familiar to me in any way. It's always and when you're talking earlier, something you said made me think of an interview I saw with Sting from the Police, and he was saying, "Oh, when you're talking about chord progressions," and he was saying the element of music that's the most that's the most appealing is the surprise. He
Yeah.
goes, "You got to have some sort of surprise, something that sounds unfamiliar but just super satisfying right away."
I love that.
And the
Yeah.
other thing that you said was the bridge. He said songs that don't have bridges fail for him, because you're
Yeah.
telling a story,
And there's no
and
climax.
well, he's like, the bridge makes everything deeper in a way. It's
Yeah.
like, because you're telling a story, and maybe you're telling one side of the story, and then the chorus is telling another side of the story,
Yeah.
kind of, and there's that contrast, but then the bridge gives you a little deeper understanding of.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, musically and lyrically, that's what I try to do with the bridge. It's always like the other side of the coin.
Yeah, for the bridges of my songs, or the solo section, I don't know what you would call it, but I always would take a vocal sample. So I take samples from like films and from just all wherever I find vocal samples.
Yeah.
And so that way there's also a human voice in there, it's just not mine, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Something that matches and I liked a lot of poetry that I found, people reading poetry online.
That's cool. Another thing that we didn't really touch base on is there's so many like components to the way that I like to songwrite that I kind of like forget because I haven't done it in a few months. Because, as musicians, I feel like we go into different phases of like hibernation from like
Yeah.
creating, or at least that's how I am.
I think
Like,
everybody does. Input and
yeah,
output. You got once you got
exactly.
output, then you've got to get more input.
Because if you think about it, like it's like trees, they shed their leaves in the fall, and then they grow in the springtime, and then they blossom.
Yeah.
We're just, it's nature, it's
Yeah.
not natural for us to be producing amazing content constantly. We have to take inspiration in. Anyways, so when I write songs, it's typically emotional, like therapy, pretty
Yeah.
much. And 99% of the time, I don't expect anyone to hear the songs that I'm writing. Like that song Triggers that I recorded on my phone. It was like a deeply personal song about me struggling with like addiction and being like a raging alcoholic, and my life was falling apart. So it was like a really emotionally triggering song, just talking about that and just feeling like isolated and alone. So that's what kind of like inspired me to start writing this whole album, because, getting sober, there's a lot of things that you deal with mentally.
And it'd
So
probably be hard to release those songs while you were still under the
yeah,
influence, because then you would be revealing too much. You'd be giving up to
yeah,
ghost, revealing too much personal information.
exactly.
And
And I
but
would
now
be
that you're
dealing with like,
sober,
yeah,
you're basically
there's not as much shame or
closing
guilt.
the chapter on that part of you're saying farewell, bidding farewell to your
Yeah,
former
au
self, right?
revoir. Exactly. So now it's almost like a photograph or something that from the past where I can look back on it and like reflect and be like, oh,
Yeah.
I like this song because I feel like I've grown a lot since then. But I didn't anticipate it to be on an album, and now I'm playing it for the world to hear.
Yeah.
And it's actually doing quite well. I was surprised. I was looking on Spotify this morning, and I have almost 12,000 monthly listeners.
Yeah,
And
I saw that. I looked
triggers.
that up the other day. That's
And it
awesome.
has over 26,000 streams, which is
Yeah.
terrifying and also just exciting.
Well, I mean, it's connecting with people. Probably a lot of
Yeah,
those are people who fall in love with the song and listen to it over and over, put it on a playlist, and
yeah, hopefully.
so that's good. Yeah,
It's just
playlists are where it's at these days, right?
totally,
I
yeah.
don't fit in anywhere, so I'm just kind of I'm waiting to find my
You
tribe
gotta
out
find
there.
your niche.
Yeah.
There's so many little,
Cinematic guitar, rock guitar instrumentals. I'm
yeah,
not sure.
that's really cool. There's definitely people out there that would love to listen to that,
Yeah.
you know?
Hopefully someday they'll find it.
Yeah,
I'm not savvy enough to, or really, I mean, I would like to have better internet exposure or whatever, but I only gravitate towards things that I'm interested in doing. You know what I
me
mean? That
too,
are
yeah.
pleasing to me, and so it's hard for me to like. I'm not into marketing, or I'm into creating like you are. Like
Yeah,
my brand, and you like to paint and create
yeah,
soap and all kinds of different things.
exactly.
I have lots of
And I made
interests,
this.
but you
I,
would,
I designed this for my band, the Plucking
yeah,
Chirps, an all-girl Irish band, which is another thing that I just like to do. It doesn't
yeah,
exactly make
exactly.
sense. It's not
Because
like
if you had
paying
to
the
choose a
bills.
band, if you had to choose a band, it's like I need to, if I want to, and I think a lot of people maybe would be in the mindset of how do I appeal to the most amount of people? What can I do? A good example
Yeah,
is Nickelback. Okay, everyone makes fun of Nickelback,
I love them. They're
but
great.
the singer, I saw an interview with him, and he said, when they talk about selling out or whatever, he's like, that was the plan from the beginning. I designed the band to get rich. So he
Wow,
never had,
what an asshole.
yeah, well,
You
it
gotta respect
worked.
him for it.
It
He did a
worked.
great job.
He
Yeah,
was like, I designed the band to be rich. And
that's
I looked
funny.
at how songs work and what songs sold and he looked at it from a business perspective and how can I create songs that will be popular. And that's the formula he followed, and it
You
worked
gotta
like a
respect
charm.
that. Yeah. I
So, and
mean,
yeah, and I used to be a lot more opinionated about a lot of things, you know what I mean? But as
yeah,
life goes on, you just, to each their own, you know what I mean? And it's like, as long as people are happy,
yeah.
you know what I mean? It's
As
really
long as you're
like, if
not
that's, if,
hurting
yeah,
anybody.
exactly. There you go. do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, the golden
Yeah.
rule. That's it. Just be happy.
Yeah.
And if you want to call your band Nickelback after working at Starbucks and create songs that are guaranteed for sales, you know. That's how they got their name, is from Starbucks.
Really?
The singer worked at I think it was the singer, worked at Starbucks, and there was some drink that everyone always ordered, and it was
They
like
get a
$3.95. And he goes, "You want your Nickelback? You want your Nickelback? You want your Nickelback?" And then he was like, "Do you want your Nickelback?"
Wow,
Here it
that's
is.
funny. That's awesome. I didn't know
So
that.
it comes from a corporate origins, right?
Yeah. And
But
I know
anyway.
that he married Avril Lavigne.
Oh,
He
yeah,
was
that's
married
right.
to
They
her
did
for a
get married,
while.
didn't they?
Yeah.
So I don't want to run on forever because, I went an hour and a half with Jay, and I know that nobody likes to see podcasts that are longer than a certain amount of time. And look,
Yeah.
my hourglass even ran out, so I don't know how long we've been at it.
That's
But
funny.
I want to ask one more question, and maybe we'll finish up with this. And that's
Sure.
how do you continue to grow, your teaching or whatever? How do you continue to grow as a musician and to absorb, new theory, technique,
Okay.
or, all of that sort of thing so that you keep moving forward?
Well, the thing that I've been doing lately that I really enjoy doing is taking a song, like I've been re-recording God Only Knows by the Beach Boys. So as a musician, there's so many different facets that you can work on. You can work on technique, playing really fast, playing cleanly, I don't think I'm a technique person because I really like to focus on the composition part and the arranging and even like just the production, the recording part.
Yeah.
So I like to take a song and then really listen to it and try to dissect it with my mind, just listen to it enough times to hear all the different layers, and then I like to try to recreate it. And by playing all of those parts, like playing the bass part, like Carol Kay from the Wrecking Crew, she came up with the coolest bass line for God Only Knows.
Yeah.
And
It's a great line.
Yeah, and I never would have like really understood it and like grown from it as a musician if I didn't like sit there and really like play it exactly how she did it and realize
And
like,
understand how it relates to.
Yeah.
And even if you're learning something that maybe she did and maybe she didn't know exactly what she's doing theoretically, you know what she's doing theoretically, so you
Yeah.
can incorporate that into your own playing, right?
Yeah, I'm trying not to let music theory hinder me because I feel like I have in the past where I'll
That's
be
a
like,
growing pain. Everyone goes through
Yeah.
that because you
Exactly.
feel enslaved by the rules for a while
Yeah.
until
you
you're
have to
able
break
to.
them.
Well, and it takes a while, but it's worth it
Yeah,
to get to the
definitely.
other side, and you realize you're never really breaking the rules because everything makes sense
Yeah,
to you, but you just find, yeah, you break the rules. But
And-
you still know what you're doing, even though you're
Yeah.
breaking the rules.
exactly. I think that's how you can truly appreciate breaking the rules is when you know that they're there, and then when you hear someone else break that rule, it's like, oh wow. It's like the part that Sting was talking about, the surprise. It's like,
Yeah.
oh wow.
I would
wasn't
have never
expecting
thought
that.
to play the this to the that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And sometimes it's people like Paul McCartney who are just musical geniuses with no musical training. He doesn't know how to read music. He doesn't understand music theory, but he knows what sounds good. You
But
know?
he does and he doesn't. That's the thing, is that you can't
Yeah.
be in the business as long as he has and be in the studio with
But I mean at
George
the
Martin
beginning.
and
Yeah.
in the beginning. But if
In
you
the
listen to
beginning.
the songs that they're writing in the beginning, I Want to Hold Your Hand versus Fixing a Hole, that's a whole
Yeah.
different world of music, you know what I mean?
You can hear him grow as a musician.
Yes.
Definitely.
Maybe because he's learning more about how music works, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's like, I want a piccolo trumpet, he would have never thought of that. The I Want to Hold Your Hand guy would have never thought of that, you know what I mean?
I know.
I want
Yeah.
what was a piccolo trumpet in Penny Lane or something, you know what I mean?
I think so.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, so he was growing, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
he knows.
Definitely.
Yeah. I finally learned, I don't know if you know it, but I'll send you the, well, I can't even really send it to you. I'd have to show you sometime, but the real way of playing Blackbird after all these years, because, there's that big mystery where nobody plays it right.
No one plays it right.
Finally,
Yeah.
someone figured it out, and I found it I found it it was like on a YouTube channel, and then I was like, and it looked like the guy had it really close. So then I went back and I was like, because I didn't ever want to teach it because I knew that the way I was playing it sounded good, but it
Yeah.
wasn't exactly like he's playing it.
That's
And
how I play it. Yeah, just like the Travis picking, like,
Yeah,
you know,
I
like
went.
the-
I
the
went and
wrong way.
found. Yeah, we'll have to. We'll go over it after
Yeah.
we stop the recording. But yeah, so I went and found a old talk show where he was sitting on a couch with an acoustic guitar and he's
Oh.
playing it. And then after I watched the video of the guy explaining it, because there's a video of Paul McCartney saying he's in concert and he goes, "How many guitar players out there?" And it's like. And he goes, "I bet you all play this song, and I bet you all play it wrong." And he goes into it.
That's awesome.
Anyway, well, yeah, I'm going to wrap it up because, and we could do another one sometime, but like I said, I'm going
Okay.
to try to keep them relatively short.
Short and sweet. That
short,
sounds good.
Short and sweet, yeah. And then congratulations on your sobriety. How long has it been now?
Thanks. It's been over 2 years
Nice.
since February. Yeah.
It's a good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a whole new life, isn't it? It's like being born again.
It really is.
It's a
I feel
beautiful
like a
thing.
baby.
Well, we got to get that. Well, that's a good message to get out to people too, because anyone who isn't sober,
Yeah.
there's hope.
Especially-
If people like us can do it, then anyone
exactly.
can do it.
If our insane brains can do it, then
Yeah, we both
Yeah.
went down as far as you can go to the very bottom, and
Yeah.
somehow came back out miraculously.
Miraculously.
So, all right,
Thanks.
Rachel. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'll see you after I stop the recording. In the
Okay.
meantime, congratulations on your
thank you.
on your new record. And I love the song, and everyone should go listen to Triggers and just find you on Spotify. Oh, we should mention that your
My artist name is Aquafox.
artist name is Aquafox. You know that I had an artist name once?
No.
It was Pagan Holiday.
Of course. I love that. That's awesome.
So Aquafox, Rachel Perry. All right. Out. We're out.
Thank you.